Hey garden friends, I'm out here treating my roses for powdery mildew. Now I have a lot of vintage roses and they are very susceptible to powdery mildew. Many newer hybrids, they're bred to be more resistant, but I do love my vintage roses. And so I do need to treat them from time to time for powdery mildew. Now, you know I'm a regenerative as well as organic gardener, so what in the world am I spraying on my roses? I'll get back to that in a minute. And if you enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up. It tells YouTube to share it with other people who may want to learn about safer ways to keep your garden healthier. All right. So here's what I'm using to spray my roses for powdery mildew. It is 1 part milk, I use whole milk, and 1 part water. And I put it in a spray bottle and I just spray the tops of the roses. I make sure there's no good bugs on here, like ladybugs or whatever. I will move them before I spray, just because, you know, anything sprayed on them probably isn't great. Not that it's going to cause any harm, but I always want to be extra careful. Now, I'm thoroughly spraying every little bit. Now, if there's some leaves that already have powdery mildew, it won't necessarily cure that, but it will help the other leaves not to develop it. I got a butterfly coming, hopefully it comes over here. Anyways, so thoroughly coat the leaves till it's dripping off, and then move on to your next rows. Now, why don't I use something, even something organic, like a 3-in-1 or something like that, or rose care, or something that has a base of neem oil? This is important to know. Now, I know a lot of organic gardeners will point you in the direction of using a neem oil-based product for bugs, funguses, other things that harm roses. And the actual facts of the matter is that neem oil isn't as innocuous or as safe, completely safe, as many people purport. Now, if you're trying to kill any kind of bad bug, there are certain beneficial bugs that it will also harm, no matter how organic, etc. Now, it is safer than the highly toxic other pesticides and insecticides, but it doesn't mean it's completely safe. And one factor that I wanted to point out is any that falls on your soil will affect the soil microbes, which affects your soil health. And if you have healthy soil, your plants will be healthier and they will be naturally more resistant to any kind of fungus, disease, or pest pressure. So that is why I steer away from using even a so-called organic spray. Now you think, well, the milk, doesn't that harm good bugs? There's not been any evidence that it does create a problem for the good bugs. It just somehow, and I'll look up the information on it, I just read some. I make sure I research everything that I do before I do it. And then if I need to take corrective measures for what I am doing, I will do so. And I'll share that along the way. Often you need to really do much more research on things than just taking like my word for it as a fellow gardener or someone else who vlogs or blogs about gardening. You need to, if you want to be truly safe in your garden and pollinator friendly, like I want to make my garden to be what's called a butterfly haven, and you can actually get a rating or a sign for being such. I can't remember what it's called. I'll have to look that up. But then if it's like a butterfly way station or whatever, it is completely safe for all butterflies. Now, I will give you an example of what I mean. So back here on this back lattice is another rose that is susceptible to powdery mildew. Now, I will spray this one very thoroughly because I know that it is susceptible. Now, my other roses that are newer varieties that aren't showing any signs of powdery mildew, I won't spray because it's, number one, not necessary at this moment, and usually you'll get a hint that the powdery mildew is starting, like it'll start on just a few leaves. Then I would go and treat those. But unless they are susceptible to it and or showing signs of it, I won't spray them even to prevent it, because some, as I said before, are bred to be resistant, and therefore it is not necessary. So limit, no matter what you treat things with, limit how much you use, and eliminate it if you don't need to use it. I'm going to move you this way because I got more down here to do. Now this climber, I think this is Blush Noisette. No, Mademoiselle. Oh, goodness crikey, I keep forgetting. Anyways, this has got these tiny pink roses, super fragrant, and normally this whole back lattice across underneath my deck is covered. This winter I cut them back hard because we had some early heavy snows that busted some of the canes down and or just needed to be refurbished. So I cut it back, and it is, I've been tying it up and into the mesh here. So what does powdery mildew look like? So let's zoom in a little bit on this leaf here, and we'll talk about it. So powdery mildew, do you see this white little, it's almost furry looking. That is powdery mildew. And it's just starting on these leaves here. The rest of them look very healthy. But I'm going to go in and spray these very well. I'm going to move this little beetle. This isn't a lady beetle, but it's red, and I don't think it would like it if I sprayed it. But, so, zoom back out so you get the full picture. And I'm just going to spray those thoroughly and those around it. Now this rose is called Kiss Me Kate. It's called Arbor Rose, and it is a very hardy climber, and it does beautifully. It has the most beautiful pink roses on it. So now I'm going to step over to this one over here, and I will spray it because I know it also has been showing evidence of some powdery mildew, and something's been eating on that. Look at that, ate that bud right off. You know what? It's not showing signs of powdery mildew. I think this one is Viking Queen, but I'm not certain. I had to dig up a bunch that were getting damaged by my gophers, and then I plopped them wherever I could. They haven't been bothered over here by gophers. Now, I don't see any, so I'm not going to spray this one. So, as I said, limit how much you spray of anything, even those proposed to be safe. So I said I'd give you an example of something. So this is a hollyhock, and you'll notice the homeliness of this leaf. That's because it's suffering from a fungal problem called rust. And this is notorious for attacking hollyhocks. And this is one that came up in the crevice of my sidewalk. It's coming out. But you have to spray to eliminate this. And you don't ever really eliminate it, you just treat it. I haven't tried the milk spray for this yet. I should try this. What I have been doing is trimming off the leaves of ones I want to keep, and the affected leaves, and then later on, as it puts in on more leaves, when it's a hotter time of year, it seems like it doesn't affect them as much. And so it's all about the blooms anyways. But if I was to spray this is a host for a certain type of butterfly. It's a host plant for their larvae and whatever. It would harm the larvae. It would harm that butterfly. So it's better for me not to have the plant than to harm the butterfly population. Now, I will never be rid of this problem, this rust problem, because there are hollyhocks that come up to reseed themselves throughout this neighborhood, and they all have this problem. So as I've said before, a lot of times I will cut off the affected leaves, and then the new leaves, look at this one, just a new leaf coming on here. You see how this one is not affected yet? I'm sure, yeah, on the back there's nothing. But that holds true that as the summer goes on and they put on new leaves, I guess it's the drier air, what have you, that the fungus doesn't thrive in, the rust, and then it looks fine. So the ones I keep are kind of in the background of the beds, so other plants are growing in front of it. So when I cut all these lower leaves off, or a lot of the leaves off, it doesn't matter. But they will go ahead and they will flower. So that's what I find nice about these plants. Now these are all the ones I have right now except for one are self-seeded, and they're singles, but they're beautiful, and they come up in places that I don't want them. And also I don't worry too much in the areas that I leave them about them, because the gophers do love them, and towards the middle of the season, end of the season, the gophers usually eat them. I just planted a double, and what I did was planted it in a flower pot, like I've been planting several things that gophers do eat, and that will protect the main root. So that's how the hollyhocks that I personally plant and not just let reseed, I will protect them now because of the gophers really eating them. And they wiped out an entire patch last year that had seeded. It was a massive patch. So that's why I avoid spraying even so-called safe insecticide, pesticide, fungicides. Like I said, I'm going to try the milk spray with this and see how that works. I'll have to try maybe this leaf this plant's coming out on another plant. I'll have to try a leaf that's coming out, or next spring I'll make sure I have enough on hand to start as soon as the volunteers come up and see how they fare with the rust with the milk spray. So there's that little tidbit of information. Ignore the sounds behind us. It's the work going on the house back there. They're doing a beautiful job. So it's worth the noise. But back to our subject at hand, the milk spray. Now, I first read about this on a website by Kevin Lee Jacobs, and he talked about how he eradicated black spot on his rose collection. And he uses a ratio of 1 part milk to 2 parts water. Now, the ratio I've been using is 1 part milk to 1 part water. I think both would work. And if you want to save on the milk cost, then the 1 part milk and 2 part water would probably work just fine, as it has in his garden. Now, as far as the science behind it, there have been greenhouse testing as well as field testing that has had some results from it. Now, it's not only your roses that powdery mildew can affect. It's zinnias. It is squash, like zucchini, so it will work on those as well. And there's no known, there was one side effect that was brought up in the scientific testing, and that was it fed some kind of bacteria that caused some kind of ugliness on the leaves. Now, I haven't experienced that. I have been using this for a couple weeks now when I first started seeing some powdery mildew on a couple roses. I only sprayed those roses so I could compare to the roses that had not been sprayed. And I will say I was amazed at how well it worked as far as batting back the powdery mildew. Now, I did not remove the leaves that had powdery mildew on them, which some say that's what you should do, and it's just that it prevents the new leaves from getting the powdery mildew. But I actually sprayed the ones that had the powdery mildew, and it did improve it greatly. The frequency of spraying is once a week, and that way you can keep up with the powdery mildew not spreading or whatever, the efficacy of the milk spray fading, but that's been the recommendation. Now, I will say that I missed a week, and they seem to be doing fine. Though I went this morning, the ones I showed you, I hadn't sprayed yet, the majority of them, And so now I've sprayed them, and we'll see. Now, a lot of times powdery mildew kind of fades as our summer continues on because we have very dry conditions. But if you live in a very humid climate, then powdery mildew often is an ongoing problem through the summer for you. So this might be something you want to try. Now, I make sure I examine my plants because I have a lot of ladybugs and beneficial insects present in my garden, and I don't want to deliberately spray them if I can avoid it. So I will gently move them off the plant if they are there before I spray the leaves down. So I hope you enjoyed this little chat about our milk rose spray for fungus as a fungicide, and how you can use it in your garden to help you keep your plants a little bit healthier. So if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends so they can learn along with us. I'll see you in my next video. Bye.